Hi, first graders. So yesterday in reading, we read a story called A Day of Joy by Gail Fitzgerald. And it was about missionaries who came on a plane to a land that didn't know Jesus and met a woman. And the story is very exciting because the woman had heard of Jesus when she was just 12 years old. And now she's very old and she's been waiting for God to send someone back to tell her more. And God did. And we're thankful for that because really her life, she's been waiting to hear about Jesus. But really what matters most is that she learned about Jesus before she dies so that she can be with Jesus for an eternity, which is way longer than our life here on earth. So I'm going to read it again. Please follow along, and then we're going to do our workbook page to go along with it. Okay, A Day of Joy. It's on page 50 of your reading book. The storm is still coming. We have turned away from it 2 times. In a short time, there will be nowhere to go, said Mr. York. We will ask God to show us a place to land the plane, Mr. Garland said. Does it sound like this was their intended place to go? Does it sound like this was their destination that they thought they were going to be? To me, it doesn't. To me, it seems like God leads them there. So listen carefully. There is a lake. We can land on it, Mr. York said. I see some people on the shore, said Mr. Garland. We will wait with them until the storm is over. Maybe God has someone for us to speak to of Jesus. So it sounds to me like God led them to this place specifically to speak to this woman, which I think is really cool. Mr. Garland landed the plane on the frozen lake. The men left the plane and went to meet the people. A man led Mr. Garland and Mr. York to his home. Inside, a lady sat in the dim light of a little fire. The lady had no need of light. Do you remember why? For she could not see. She sat by the fire to keep warm. May we come in? Mr. York asked. Mr. Garland said, we have come to tell you of Jesus. The lady clapped her hands. Come in, she said. Please sit. I am so glad you came. The lady had a story for the men. One day, when I was just 12, some people came here. They spoke to us of Jesus. Then they left. That was many, many years ago. Since then, I have prayed and prayed that someone would come to tell me more of Jesus. That day, the men led her to Jesus. The lady had much joy. The men had much joy. And heaven had much joy. Joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth. Luke 15:7. So God answered this woman's prayer and sent these missionaries, even though this didn't seem like their intended destination. This didn't seem like that's where they wanted to go. But God led them there by sending a storm, by letting them land, having them be welcomed, and led to this woman who wanted to be talked to about Jesus. So we're going to do page 97 in your reading workbook. Okay, and the top says, the joy of salvation. Okay, so each sentence, there are 8 sentences, and there's green boxes that give you a choice of words to finish the sentence. So we're going to read it, and when we get to the green box, we're just going to say blank, and then we will figure out which word goes in. If you'd like to do each one on your own, you can pause after I say the number of the sentence, and then come back and do it with me. Okay, so number 1. Okay, God showed the men a place to land the blank. The choices are plane or boat. So which one is it? Plane. Very good. So circle plane. Mr. Garland could see some blank. I'm sorry, number 2, if you already didn't read it. Mr. Garland could see some blank, either tents or people? So what did he see? He saw people. Very good. Circle people. Number 3. The plane landed on a frozen blank. Did it land on a frozen road or did it land on a frozen lake? Lake. Very good. Number 4. The men needed to wait for the blank to be over. So what was there that was stopping them from flying? Was it a storm or the day? It was a storm. Yes, they needed to wait. The men needed to wait for the storm to be over. Number 5. The men met a blank inside the man's home. Did the men meet a preacher or a lady? A lady. Very good. Number 6. The lady was blank that the men had come. Was the lady sad or glad? She was glad. Very good. Number 7. The lady wanted to learn more of blank. Did she want to learn more of Jesus or Mr. Garland? Jesus. Very good. And number 8. The lady asked Jesus to blank her from her sin. Did the lady ask Jesus to shake her from her sin or to save her from her sin? To save her, right? We're not shaken from our sin. We're saved from our sins because of Jesus. So circle save. Okay, turn it over. It says, put a check by the people who tell you about Jesus. Okay, so this could be different for everybody. So I'll read them. And if this is somebody that tells you about Jesus, put a check mark on the line next to it. If it isn't, then just leave it blank. Okay, so dad. Is dad someone that tells you about Jesus? Is grandma someone that tells you about Jesus? If it is, put a check. Do you have a brother that tells you about Jesus? Does your teacher tell you about Jesus? Everybody needs a check mark there, right? Do you have a friend that tells you about Jesus? Well, you're all friends and you all tell each other about Jesus. So you can include that, or someone that you are friends with outside of school or in school that isn't in our class. Do they tell you about Jesus and talk about Jesus with you? Okay, mom. I bet everybody's going to check that one. Grandpa. Do you have a grandpa who shares Jesus with you? My dad, my children's grandpa, talked about Jesus with my children a lot. Do you have a sister that talks to you about Jesus? Okay. Does your pastor tell you about Jesus? Yes. Or do you have maybe an aunt that tells you about Jesus? Okay. So your answers will be different than everybody else's, and that's okay. And then the bottom says, who can tell you about Jesus? So just write a few people that you know that tell you about Jesus. You can put it in a complete sentence. You can say, my mom tells me about Jesus. You can include some things that this person might say or do. You can talk about whoever you want. You can do more than one sentence and then just send me a picture of what you write. Okay? And that is it for that story and for reading today. So today is Thursday, so we'll start our next story on Monday. Okay? So have a great day and I'll see you tomorrow.